Okay, so YouTube, we all know, is one of these apps that really works on the whole like pull down, and every time you pull down to refresh, there's new videos, new feeds, or whatever, right? And we kind of talked about this when we were discussing The Social Dilemma, that Netflix documentary. And they're really like trying to keep you inside the app as much as possible, right? So every time you pull down to refresh, you get new stuff. And I'm always very surprised actually at how good they are at recommending stuff for me to watch that you know, that I normally would be like, why are they recommending this to me, right? Like it seems like, why would I be interested in this? And then I click on it and I get really addicted to this stuff, right? So one of the things I got really addicted to like last year, and actually I kind of got back into it recently, was the whole, like, have you ever watched these YouTube videos of people basically like really good like computer scientists or hackers getting back at scammers? I think we talked about this at one point. Like
the I've seen one where it's just over the phone, but you're talking about actual like computer like hacking?
Well, no, I mean, it's kind of like so you know, sometimes these scammers, they'll like take control of your computer. They're like, oh, we're technical support, like give us access to your computer.
Yeah.
We need to get rid of viruses on your computer or whatever. And then these YouTube videos are of like really good people like basically attacking back, like and taking over their computers and like getting control of their like video camera feeds and just really getting back at the scammers basically. So so that was one thing a long time ago, and I tweeted recently that I also have recently gotten into cat videos, which is like, you know, clearly 20 years behind the trend of internet cat videos. But what what I really want to talk about is one of the things that came up in my feed that I will say I was very interested for a couple of days, because I haven't watched any in about a week, because basically I've been only watching Apple M1 stuff now. But for a couple of days, and I think I'll get back into it, and it has even sparked a hobby, sparked a desire to have a hobby. Not quite having the hobby yet. But there's this YouTube channel called The Lock Picking Lawyer. And literally, it's just this guy who picks locks, and he has like a couple thousand videos, like maybe
a lawyer though. I'm assuming he's a lawyer.
That's a good question. I don't know if he's an actual lawyer. But,
he's not. He just calls his YouTube channel.
It's true. It'd be really weird if he wasn't. It's like is it Dr. Ho? Who's the guy that makes like he makes like all these like medical products, and I don't know if he's an actual
I feel like
doctor.
anyone that calls themselves doctor or whatever is not. Yeah, they're never a doctor.
Not an actual doctor. He might be.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even question whether he's a lawyer or not. But he basically just like he'll basically go through like any kind of common lock on the market, like Mastercraft or I don't know. I'm gonna say Duralock. I don't even know if that's a lock.
I don't think I can name more than one
company. Exactly.
Company.
Well, what was the? I mean, there was always this recommended combination lock that we would get from high school. They always, Dudley. Yes,
that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Anyways, so he'll go through all these locks, and you know, it's a little bit of a kind of public service announcement. Like if you really want to protect your valuables, don't buy this lock. And it's really interesting because like there are some locks that are like quicker to pick than they are to know the combination actually. Like some of these locks, like literally like you stick like a tool inside, and if you just reach way back into the back of the lock, it'll pop it open rather than like even knowing the combination.
Right.
So this has sparked like I really want to get into this.
Nice.
And so I started researching how to pick a lock. You know, this is going to be the beginning of my arrest here, but okay, just long story short, it is a very interesting reason why you can pick locks. And the reason you can pick locks, well, not all locks, but kind of a typical pin and something lock. I'm not that into it yet.
Tumblr or something?
What's that?
Tumblr?
Yes, you got it. Yeah. You know more about this than I do. So pin and tumbler locks. It all has to do with manufacturing defects. Like because we can't, I guess, I don't know why they haven't figured this out, but apparently the way they like carve the holes in the lock and the cylinder that rotates they're just slightly off. They're not perfectly in line. And if they were perfectly in line, it would be a lot harder to pick a lock actually. But because they're just slightly off each one, it allows you to basically like attack each pin sequentially, right? Because like normally a lock, when you put a key in, all the pins go in the right position, right? Simultaneously.
Yeah. And
if you're picking a lock, if you get one pin up, well, how do you do the other pins and still hold that one in place? Well, it all has to do with the fact that they're uneven. And so it's all because of a manufacturing issue. Like if they could line them up perfectly, it would be a lot harder because as soon as you moved on to another one, the one that you were first working on would drop in or whatever. So, so lock picking is definitely a hobby that I have in mind to attack, but not quite. I haven't quite attacked yet.
I support this. I feel like everyone should know, like if we were in a movie or a video game, you always need that one person on the team that can pick locks. So yeah, I endorse this.
Yes, I'm happy you endorsed my gateway into criminal activity. So, all right, welcome everybody to the ETC podcast, your one-stop pod for entertainment, technology, and cars, and all things random. My name is Casey Lee, and sitting across the city from me, as always, is
Aaron Zadenka.
It is episode 52 for this wonderful November 18th, 2020, the third last episode in the season. That's right, we have one more next week, and then we have a Christmas episode. And that is it for season 6. It's been a really good season, right? It's been a really
the best one. The best one, I think.
I agree. I think it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. It's been a glorious return. I'm happy that upon our return, we actually delivered a pretty good, solid season. Now, before we end the season, I mean, again, we have one more episode next week, and then we have a Christmas episode. I want to give a little message to Deanna, who wrote us a couple weeks ago. Requesting, remember she requested an environmental episode, right?
Yes.
And so I just want to let her know that we're not going to do it this season, but rest assured we haven't forgotten about you. And when we come back in the new year for season 7, we will be doing an environmental episode at some point then. So unless you want to do it next week, I don't know.
This is way more planned. Like I like the fact that we're actually saying the number of episodes left in a season.
Yes.
And we're actually going to do it, I think. And we're also planning and promising what's happening next season.
Well,
we're actually saying that it's going to be next year.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the funny thing, right? Because I think, so first of all, FDK, the level of planning that went into when the season was going to end, I mentioned last week, is basically me asking Aaron, hey, do you want to take a break at some point? And he's like, yeah, okay. Well, why don't we do towards the end of November? And so literally it was about a 5-10 second conversation while we were putting the show notes together and editing and everything. And then the only reason I brought this up is because, one, I felt bad that I wouldn't want Deanna to think that we're just blowing off the environmental episode. We're not. But it's like we didn't have enough episodes to plan to put it in. So it's really the lack of planning that made me feel bad that is now announcing the episode on air that we're going to do it next season. So, so take that as you will. Take that as you will. But yeah, I think we can do it. I
Definitely.
We did talk about that March is kind of like Earth Day, Earth Month kind of thing.
Did we ever verify that? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I think, again, I'm anticipating that we will be back probably around January, go on our Christmas break, maybe a week or so to get back to things, come back in January all refreshed for a new season. And as long as we sustain that season until March, I think it'll be perfect environmental episode right there.
Yeah,
and
I think it makes sense. Something. What I've been doing starting last year is after the end of the year. So I guess it would be in January or end of this year. Is just do kind of a calculation. If you've heard of things like carbon footprints, like basically, what was my personal footprint for the year, and you add up, everything from what you eat to travel to your, living. Like energy to heat and cool, where you live. So yeah, that'll be timely. So maybe
there you go.
Maybe I can share that, and it's something that I do at the end of the year, and so maybe we'll come back and I'll share something about that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, maybe we don't wait till March. Maybe we do it a little bit earlier and closer to the time that you have that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to be honest. I'm expecting you to drive the majority of that episode. I mean, again, I would say I am environmentally aware of the problems and the things that I can do to change. But I'm not very environmentally active. I don't, kind of seek out, like, for example, you're doing the carbon footprint. Like I'd say that's pretty active, and I don't do things like that. But what I plan to do for that episode is do a little bit of research into, certain technologies that promote it. And not to mention, I think there are a couple of things that I do technology wise that do help the environment that I would like to kind of share with other people and kind of, there's a couple of things that I think that I do. And I wouldn't say I do them directly for the environmental benefit, but they do have an environmental side benefit. So for example, like there are a lot of things that I invest in electronics wise that last a really long time, or, like the whole reusable technology and stuff like that. And I think those things, can definitely benefit, the environment and could benefit others. So, yes. So while we're at it, why don't we just jump straight into our regular bit? I mean, we're already talking about people writing into us, so we're going to jump into our regular bit here.
I like it, keeping people on their toes. You never know what to expect.
Exactly. So this is our regular segment called "What Andrea Said." So, all right. So Andrea wrote us, a regular listener and good friend and good supporter of the podcast. Here's what she had to say. Episode 51. So that's last episode. Hi guys. Interesting info on Netflix's new features. I can't say I miss channel hopping though. All right. So disagreeing with me on that one. If I need something mindless, a Hallmark movie will do. You don't want to necessarily pay close attention to those. Curious about the play button Aaron talked about, and if it plays a show personally selected for you or just random. Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I know it is per account, so they must be doing something. Because I think when you go into your Netflix account, there's some category, right? There's a For You category, I think.
Yes.
So I suspect that it probably pulls from there, but I've tried it once or twice, and I can't tell. Like they weren't, because I know there is actually a feature in Netflix where you can say what you want. You can queue it up, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't use that feature. So if you did, maybe it does pull from that. But it seemed to be at least like something that I'm like, oh, okay, well, cool. Like this, like it served up recommendations, I guess, that made sense. Well,
let me ask you. Let me ask you this: were you happy with what they selected for you?
I mean, that's hard to say because it's like, again, the kind of mindset with that usually is often I'll have something in mind that I want to watch, right? So I don't think I was in the right mindset. So it made sense.
So no.
But I wasn't like, okay, cool. Like I'm not going to start this whole new show, right? I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and
say,
like,
it's been a great day. Oh, I can't wait to watch this. Oh, Saving Private Ryan, very very depressing.
Exactly,
to be fair, I haven't seen that movie. To this day, I think it's the only. Or not the only movie. There's only 2 movies I've ever decided to start and within seconds turned off. And the 2 are, one was Saving Private Ryan. And that wasn't because I thought it was a bad movie or anything. It was just, I put it in, I was just like, this feels a bit heavy and I'm just not in the mood for a war movie. So I turned it off. Sorry, in terms of new movies, there's definitely movies that I've put on that I've seen before and taken them off. But in terms of I've decided to sit down and watch a new movie. The other one was Happy Feet. And that was because within the first couple minutes, I was like, "This looks really annoying and terrible," and I just turned it off right away. So, it might have been a good movie. Like if I gave it a chance, it might have been a good movie. But
So to answer your question, Andrea, it is for you in some way.
Sad to hear you'll be on Sad to hear you'll be on a why can't I say this word? Sad to hear. Sad to hear you'll be on a hiatus. I do love that this podcast doesn't get too deep. It's exactly what I need right now, and it feels like we're hanging out. Yeah, it's a good question, right? It's exactly what I need right now, and it feels like we're hanging out once a week. So I'll miss you guys. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but that is definitely the #1 review that we get. Like I've heard this multiple times now. and for better or for worse, listening to our podcast is like hanging out with us, which leads me to think that basically when you hang out with me or Aaron, or maybe just specifically me, I don't really let anybody talk, and I
was actually gonna say something different. I was gonna say we're clearly terrible friends because we don't actually hang out with people. They have to listen to our podcast to hang out with us. So anyone listening to this, you can hang out with us. That is a possibility. You don't have to just listen to the podcast.
Well, I would normally blame it on COVID, but we've had that review pre the pandemic.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and when I say hang out, it's basically this.
Exactly. Yeah. But but listening to the podcast gives the person the convenience of being able to hang out with us whenever they want.
It's true,
right? Like it's like 1 a.m. and it's like somebody's like, oh hey Casey, and not to mention. They'd have to hang out with both of us, so we'd have to coordinate those schedules.
Yeah.
The podcast is brilliant on demand hanging out with us, right?
Yeah.
Like they took away TV. Like maybe hanging out with friends needs to go on demand as well. Right?
That's the next big thing. Yeah, we should make that. It's just
exactly.
Everyone just asynchronously, talks for 5 minutes and just jam together and
like literally, can you imagine like your friends? They record a video of themselves, but like with proper breaks and converse. So they're like talking and they'll take a pause. And then at any time if you want to hang out with a person, you can basically like hit, okay, hang out with Casey or hang out with Aaron or whatever. So can only imagine that work that goes into this though. So I can understand taking a break. If you have any non-deep podcast recommendations, please share. Cheers, Andrea. Andrea, I will share a podcast with you that leads to my news story. But before we get into that, I just want to read one more email. Thanks, Andrea, as always, for writing in. Again, one of the biggest supporters, not the biggest supporter of our podcast. We got a YouTube comment on episode 49, so going two or three episodes back now, from someone named Clayton Murray. Keep uploading. All the best and good luck with growing your channel. Now, you're thinking like, man, that's pretty good, right? That's a pretty good comment.
Thank you,
And
Clayton.
then it all falls apart after this. Have you
What is he selling?
Have you heard of smzeus.com? Use it to promote your videos. It'll help you grow your channel. Now,
it's interesting.
Okay,
but it's like the other that was the other I don't know what their name was, but this is the second one we got now, right?
Well, okay. Now I gotta be fair to this guy. So like I haven't looked into this. So like legitimately, this guy might just have his own channel, and like maybe legitimately like he uses it to grow his channel. So I don't want to jump to that conclusion on this one because the other one was clearly like it was like a mass email, and it's like buy views, buy subscribers for a couple dollars or whatever, right? Yeah. This guy legitimately could be a fan of our stuff, and he's just like just sharing, So I don't want to jump to that conclusion, but I'm always a little bit suspicious, one, when we get comments at all, because that's weird. But two, when there's when there's a link in there, and not to mention he also typed out smzeus.com with like spaces in, so I think maybe to avoid the YouTube algorithm filtering it out and stuff like that. So a lot of suspicious stuff here. But Clayton, if you are a legitimate fan, email us at podcast.etc@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. But if you're not, whatever, we'll take it. We'll take the comments we can get. All right, let's get to the news. So I said I want to recommend a podcast to Andrea. Andrea, the podcast that makes me laugh and doesn't ever go too deep is Conan O'Brien's podcast. So Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. It's been on for years now. Maybe, wow, it's been on for almost, probably a couple of years now. Super good podcast, very typical Conan O'Brien. Definitely listen to that, which leads me into my news, though. So, first bit of news, Conan O'Brien is moving networks yet again.
Oh. Yeah. What is he on right now? I don't even know.
So, he's on TBS. So Conan has gone through, obviously, a lot. He was, obviously, Late Show on NBC, then transitioned to The Tonight Show on NBC, but then whole thing got really ugly, big feud, him and NBC parted ways. Then he went to TBS, and he's basically been at TBS ever since. But he did change his format of his show. So his show used to be an hour long, right? Like all the other late night shows. But he actually, when he started the podcast and he came back to air, he actually shortened the show to half an hour because he kind of wants to do a lot more things than just the TV show. Things like the podcast, like live shows, all this stuff like that. So kind of really expanding his empire. But what's really cool is that, now, so I believe he's done with TBS like soon or as soon as this transition happens. And he's going to HBO.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a step up.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it's HBO Max. So I don't know. Is HBO Max, like, is there stuff that's exclusive to the streaming platform versus the channel? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, what is like I never really understood what HBO Max really was, because my only experience with HBO is only any of the online streaming stuff.
Right.
What is Max? Do you know what that is?
Okay, so as far as I understand, and first of all, it's only available in the States. So in Canada, we still get HBO through like the partners, right? So like Bell Media, basically, right? Like, so you can subscribe to HBO through like Bell and Rogers.
Yeah.
And then you get HBO through Crave if you want to stream it. Now, as far as I understand, HBO Max, so there used to be a streaming service in the States called HBO Now. And then you also had the TV channels. And as far as I know, HBO Max is basically their streaming service that replaces HBO Now, and it has all their HBO stuff on there. So ultimately, they're competitor to Disney Plus and Netflix and all this stuff.
Right.
But as with every streaming service, like, you know how like Hulu and stuff like that, right? There are stuff that's like exclusive, like an NBC Peacock and stuff like that. There's stuff that's like exclusive to the streaming service, but doesn't show up on the channel, like the cable channel, right? Just because they have a lot more, like there's not airtime to compete with or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So so officially he's going to HBO Max, which I don't know if that means it'll also air on HBO or not, and I don't know if that represents a step up or, I mean, it's HBO. Like, HBO's got to be a step up from TBS regardless, right?
Yeah. I don't know, because like, TBS, like I don't think I could name another show.
No.
Like, that's on TBS.
Well, and this is the other thing. TBS in the States, I think, is quite different from TBS in Canada. Like, TBS in Canada, like TBS in the States, I think, is actually a relatively major network. And in Canada, it's a little bit of the US network. Okay. And, you know, so like,
So we didn't get the full TBS experience.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we got, I mean, like Final Space, for example, right? Like Final Space was a TBS show in the States, but then licensed to Netflix in Canada, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But anyways, so Conan O'Brien's going to HBO Max. I'm still a massive Conan fan. I still think he's the best. He's still hilarious. Still one of the best late night shows. And I'll tell you one thing I actually really respect about him is I actually genuinely think he's a better interviewer than a lot of late night show hosts. Like, he's got a very good interview style, I find, and he asks like really great questions. So I think I talked about this in the past, but definitely check out Serious Jibber Jabber, which was kind of like his serious talk show. It was on YouTube.
Interesting.
And
like, for real, or like as like a parody, like for real.
Well, no, it's real. Like, I mean, he's not completely serious. It's not like he doesn't make jokes or anything like that, but it's basically like hour-long interviews. And very like Charlie Rose style, like black background, and just he spends a lot of time with these people rather than like a 5-minute interview on a show. He did this one round table with like 4 Simpsons writers, and it was like super, super good. So
yeah.
All right. It's one of these things where I contemplate like
that's it. That's all the news.
All right. No, I was just. I mean, it's 24 minutes. Usually, we kind of take a break around now. Right. We could probably squeeze in a news bit. Like, do you have a short news bit that you can?
I don't know. I mean, I have something I'll discuss after the break. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I feel there's been like a lot. I feel like, again, even though I'm very hyper biased to look at Apple News, I feel like there's just like a lot of Apple News in the last week or two.
So I mean, obviously, shattering.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's confirmed their new MacBooks are amazing. Which I don't think is surprising. The thing that was announced today, though, is there's a pretty big shift in their App Store policy. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, I just read that.
Yeah. So like a lot of people probably have experience buying something on the Apple App Store, maybe buying an app or whatever it is. Usually they charge, they take a 30% cut of that. So Apple would, if you sell something for $10, they would take $3 out of that sale. But pretty big change today. They've reduced that in half, basically 15%, which is a pretty big deal. At least up to I think $1 million, and I guess after you make $1 million in the App Store, I think it's still 30%. But that's great because vast majority of apps, they're going to make less than $1 million, and I think especially for those smaller companies, right? I think that's going to be a big deal for them. But no, it's a really interesting shift.
Well, the interesting thing too, I mean, obviously, as with any news story, it's obviously drawing criticism from the people who are making more than $1 million, right? Like I think Spotify is complaining about it. I mean, Spotify has been in a pretty big battle with them in general, right? I don't know who else. There was a couple other names that were like criticizing this.
Well, the big thing, and I think actually somebody, it might have been, it was probably Andrea. I'm going to say Andrea because not that many people write into us, but I think she had asked about, this whole thing that between Apple and I think Epic Games, right?
Yeah, it was her. Yeah,
that was a big kind of battle. And we can't tell you anything more about that. But it is part of this, like, I think that was one event in a chain of events around this whole kind of, Apple versus the developers on their platform, right? And so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess you'd say, because the beauty of the App Store is that, it's a distribution, right? So let's say you have an app idea. It's not easy, it's not simple, but you technically have a platform that you could reach, billions of people potentially, right? Yeah. And there's value in that, right? I think nobody would say there's no value in that, right? Yeah. But the flip side of that is once you do find success, that becomes a pretty big deal, right? If you run a business, you'll know like 30% off your bottom line is a pretty big, cut. So, I think the whole thing with Epic was just sort of, one in a series of other companies kind of like really fighting against this. And Apple is just so big now that I think there's also the government is kind of being involved. I don't know if anyone is kind of old enough to remember the days when Microsoft like basically was forced by the government to basically break off into smaller entities. I think Apple is a bit worried about that right now because again, like they're literally the biggest company in the world and the government could just tell them to stop doing something. So I think they're maybe also doing this to kind of get ahead of that, right? To say like, okay, well, we're not being unfair here. We're going to make some changes.
Well, this is the thing, right? I mean, it's all around antitrust, right? And I feel like with Epic, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the biggest thing with Epic was the in-app purchases and subscription stuff, right? So FDK, like if you release an app on Apple and you allow for in-app purchases, like in-app subscriptions, Apple takes a cut of that as well. So not only do they take a cut of the purchase of the app, but things that you buy inside the app itself. And the thing that it gets like where it gets really kind of icky is like, so for example, like YouTube and because Breton told me about this like a while back, and it's always been a thing where it's like if you subscribe to YouTube Premium on your web browser, it's like a certain price, and if you do that, you can access the exact same subscription you can on the phone. Yeah. Just the transaction, the part that you decide where to pay for it. But if you pay for it in the app, it's more to compensate for the cut that Apple takes, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I believe Epic was the same thing, right? And then it gets a little bit crazier than that too, right? Because there's now this sign in with Apple, right? And I experienced this with one of my clients where we offered sign in with Facebook and sign in with Google, and then we've been pushing this app. It's been fine. It's been great. And then one time we made a small update and pushed it, and they said we rejected your app because you offer sign in with Google and sign in with Facebook, but you don't offer sign in with Apple or whatever, right? Yeah. And so that's where things get a little bit, because definitely. it's not like they're asking now just pay for our service. It's like we're forcing you to do things a certain way, right? Yeah,
and I think the thing that I think they're doing right though is, again, the fact that they are, setting that upper limit. Again, I think they're approaching that in a good way because some of these bigger companies are still going to complain. But, if they get into a court and kind of, on some sort of antitrust thing with the government, like the optics of a company like Spotify complaining, that rakes in billions and billions of dollars, like, they're not going to have a very good case, right?
No,
Versus if there's a bunch of smaller developers, right, that are coming, it's like, I think that is a good example of where you have this really big company that has a monopoly that's pushing the small players down.
Yeah.
So I think they're really smart in doing that because, again, I think companies like Spotify and Epic, I'm not saying they don't have a case. And there's two sides to that argument, but it's just that, it definitely, I think Apple is smart.
It's a very like you respect the way they went about it.
Yeah, the same way with Apple, right? Like I think they're not just forcing it because they have a service. They are grounding that in that it is a better, more secure experience, right? Like like you don't have to rely on companies like Facebook and Google that are productizing your data to sell ads, right? So I think, again, there's always a business reason for them doing it, but I think they are successful because they're offering you like a benefit, right? There's a benefit that is not just in their business interest.
I mean, it is, again, that one I'm a little bit sketched out about because, again, it's like only if you offer Facebook and Google, you have to, right? It's like if you don't offer any third party, we're not going to force you. But if you offer a third party, you have to offer us, right? So, anyways, I think you're right though. Regardless of like if you agree with specifically the ethics or whatever behind it, the way that they're handling it is pretty intelligent. It's a pretty smart way to go.
They're doing it in the Apple way, right? Like it's almost like they're applying good user experience principles to their like legal battles.
And this is the thing, right? Like I'm not so cynical to think that every business is only in it for business, right? And of any company, I think Apple is one of like I think the big guys like Apple and Google honestly just want to do some really cool stuff and make really awesome things. Like don't get me wrong. But obviously there is also a business aspect to those companies, right? And that inches in. So, all right, we're gonna take a short break, but we'll be right back after this. We are back on this episode 52 of the ETC podcast, your one-stop pod for entertainment, technology, and cars, season 6, episode 12. It has been an awesome season, but we will be ending it. This is the third last episode, one more episode next week, and then one Christmas episode. We don't know when the Christmas episode. Are we doing it like right after that? Like, do you know? Are we deciding on the air when?
We'll see. I think we should keep people again on their toes, right? Maybe it won't happen. We'll.
All right. We are going to jump into our regular segment. What is on Aaron's noggin but underneath his toque today?
Yes. Yeah, it's
a nice
winter. It's winter here, so I thought I'd get in the mood.
Do you guys have a lot of snow out there?
No.
But a little
cold.
bit though, right? Yeah. All right, what is under that toque of yours on top of your noggin?
Yes. So, this is I feel like I don't know if I should share this because I risk just sounding like an old person, but yes, I am kind of an old person now. But have you seen Twitter has introduced a new social feature called Fleets? Have you heard that?
Yes.
Heard of this? Okay. Have you seen it in action?
This is number 2 on my list of news items. Twitter Fleets.
I like how I'm always like the things that you don't think you need to get to. So have you used it? Have you like played around with it?
I mean, I'm not a heavy Twitter user as it is. So, but also like, did you like this? You realize this is also following like Facebook just very recently introduced their vanishing messages, and WhatsApp did as well.
Yeah, like you've used like stories on Instagram, or you've seen stories on Instagram, right? Probably.
Yes.
Like, which is also basically what Snapchat did. Like, these things are all just
Snapchat. Yes.
Yeah. Like Snapchat is brilliant actually because they invent everything social.
It's so true. It's so true.
So I had to like it was uncanny because when I first tried it out, I'm like, wait, what app am I using? I was like, am I did I accidentally go into like Instagram? But no, it was Twitter.
Really?
The UI is ridiculous. Like it's like pixel by pixel almost. and so, again, that's actually not my, like, what I'm going to talk about. But I mean, I think some people can kind of just make fun of, like, oh, they're just copying Instagram, who just copied Snapchat. But at the same time, I think,
is it similar to stories, or were you just using that as an example?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Oh,
so you
it's
see,
kind of like the vertical,
again,
like, or the,
I don't know if this is, they might have more features than this, but you basically at the top of I forget which page, you basically get bubbles, right?
Oh, okay.
And like for each, a person, you, like Casey Lee would have a bubble, and you click into that, and then how stories you can keep appending videos and photos, and there's like the little like timeline at the top. That's exactly what it is.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
because LinkedIn did that too, which is even weirder, I think.
Oh yes, yeah. That's right? No one cares about LinkedIn, but like, yeah,
there's just no shame in plagiarism now, right? And you're right. No, it's all Snapchat. Yeah.
It's all like it's crazy, like how much Snapchat influences these massive other products, right? And so, again, like I'm not that critical of it, because at the end of the day, I think, these things should not, if there's a pattern that works and people are familiar with, I actually think that's a good thing, right? Like, they shouldn't reinvent how something works just because they're not like Instagram. If it works well and people have, like, generally adopted it, then that's fine. So I don't actually care about that. But I just like, so it's interesting because I think, in general, I'm not a fan of this feature. Like, I don't see myself using it. I don't see I don't think I'm gonna get a lot out of it, but they just launched it, so who knows?
So, okay, hold on though. So I must have mistaken what these are then. Like, I thought fleets were literally just tweets that disappear after a while.
So yes, this is where I haven't fully played around with it. I think that is true, but I think these also are appearing like...
Oh, okay. They're not just appearing in your regular feed or whatever.
No, they don't appear in your regular feed. So the, I guess, interface to view them is at the top. But I think this is very similar with Instagram stories, though, right?
Yeah,
like they don't stay around forever.
It's the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's how it works. But yeah, I just, again, overall, like, not a fan of this. And again, maybe it's just because I'm old. But the thing is, like, I don't know how like you see Twitter, but Twitter's always been an interesting, I guess you could call it a social network, because it's just in general, like, that's how you classify it. But I've always found it an interesting just thing that exists. And I think, Twitter's been a weird thing, because I think you look at some of the other companies like Facebook and Instagram, it's like they have a much more clear purpose, right? Like, they're much more focused, and you kind of know what they're about. And, I think they've been much more focused in like what they're building and what they kind of roll out in terms of features. Whereas Twitter, I think, has always been kind of caught between, is this more of like a public, almost like news service, or is it a social network where I connect with people, right? And I think people use it for both. But I've always been of the opinion that, like, I've always enjoyed Twitter, and it's less so now that they're doing more of these things, as less of a social network, in the traditional sense of I'm doing it to share my life and connect with others and things like that. And more of just like a really valuable service where I can, like, learn things, see what's happening in real time.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And I think I've talked to you about this before, or you might have read it or heard it or whatever. But like the way that you use Twitter, like as more like you're consuming information, you're not really there to connect and whatever and see what your friends are up to or whatever. That apparently was really the founder of Twitter's, like, his vision. Like what's his name? The guy who also did Medium?
So one of them, Ev Williams. Yeah.
I think that's the guy who did Medium as well, right?
Yeah, and then Jack Dorsey was
okay, so not Jack Dorsey, but the Williams guy.
Yeah.
So because he said he never liked the ideas, or he himself, at least in particular, didn't really like social networking.
Yeah.
It wasn't about like, oh, I want to connect with you and talk to you and all this stuff like that. He was more about just, I want to put stuff out and have people read it or whatever, but I don't want to have a two-way. It's not like a two-way thing. It's just really, I want to just put stuff out there.
Or I want to read. I want to read what, like, Bill Gates or Barack Obama is saying, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's not about having a conversation
about what a random person ate for lunch.
Or something. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so anyways, continue.
So I think that's how I've always seen it, and I think again it's like there's a, you know, if you want to get that sort of you know, more social media aspect, I feel like that's already solved. You know, there's the Facebook, there's the Snapchat, there's Instagram, whatever you want really. So I've always felt that Twitter was like the last kind of stronghold for not going to like social media.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah, it's true.
Even
So
things
true.
like YouTube, right? I think YouTube initially was much more geared towards they just like learn random things, right? Or like watch random videos. Whereas now I would say like 90% of it is like, you know, the kind of blogger, like basically like creative vlogs and kind of YouTubers, right? Which is great, but I think again it's not that far removed from, you know, what you see scrolling through Instagram, right? It's very close, right, in terms of content. So I think at the end of the day, the thing that kind of bugs me, and I guess is turning into a rant from, again, not a young person, but I think the thing that bugs me is like all those other things are very optimized for your own use, right? Like they're very optimized for like, you know, basically, and this being maybe overly critical, but I think that when people post things on Facebook, it's more for their own benefit than others, right? Like I think majority of the stuff posted on those networks, if you ask someone, oh, why did you post that? Right? They might not tell you directly, but I don't think they're posting it to be like, oh, I'm changing the world or I'm educating others, right? It's
so
like,
true. It's
look
so
at a
true.
picture of what I did today, right? And it's no one needs to know that, right? It's again, and I'm not critical of that. I'm just saying like I think it's actually a very valuable thing because, you know, I think people need an outlet, right? To just tell people what they're doing, kind of document their lives, whatever it is. But I always felt Twitter was not that. And what, you know, the best part of Twitter for me is actually that aspect of information that is shared that maybe people other than the person sharing it are going to get benefit from, right?
Yeah.
You know, like I think, you know, like just recently with election night, right? Twitter is still like, it's still probably the best place to go, just get like up to the second information on what's happening, right? And there's a lot of commentary and things like that. But again, there's a lot of stuff on there that is just, it's I think a great service for that kind of something's happening somewhere in the world. I want to see a range of what respected people, you know, and various opinions are saying about that, and I can get that no matter where I am, and it's a free service, right? It's amazing. I don't have to pay for it. It used to be that you didn't have any ads in your face either, right? Now there's ads, but it's still not on the level of like, I don't know the last time you were on Instagram or Facebook, but one, it's a ridiculous amount of ads, and it's also very like targeted and manipulative towards like the things you're doing, right? Whereas Twitter, I feel like the fact that they're not a great ad network, like I've never seen an ad on Twitter that was like, oh, I want that, or like, oh, how did you know that? Every Twitter ad, I'm like, what is it? Like, this is so random. Like, why are you showing this? Right? Which is So yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of social networks are just geared towards the, you know, making the person sharing information to their benefit, whereas Twitter I've always seen as very like it's closer to, I think initially in my mind, something like a Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
Than a Google, right? Where
no, it's so true. It's so true. Like I was just about to say, like when you mentioned the election results, like Google is the first thing that came to mind, and it's like, and then I started thinking, yeah, I never thought about that. That like I never go to Facebook or LinkedIn to search for news or search for a topic, right?
Yeah.
I'm always in there for like, oh, I got a notification bubble. I guess I'll check what this is. And the only thing I really care about when I'm in there is if someone liked my own post or reacted to my post. I don't really care about what other people are posting, right? Whereas Twitter, it's kind of like Google. It's like I go there specifically because I'm like, oh shoot, this crazy thing happened. I got to look it up or whatever, right? I never thought about that, but it's very true, and it's sad that it's being. Well, I'll tell you, like now I will be honest, like. Twitter is, even just thinking right at this moment, Twitter is something I think I respect more than I enjoy. Like I respect what Twitter is versus actually like, I actually don't use it that much and I don't right, whatever. But I've always respected Twitter for being hyper-focused, right? I hate when people say the word laser focused, but laser focused, right? I love the fact that their feature set has really not changed since they launched. And even when they first came out, I was like, how the heck can this be a thing? How can how can status updates of 140 characters actually be something useful, right?
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And remember that app that took it way too far? Was it Yo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally just Yo. I was like, okay, that's way too far down that road. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of sad. Like I mean, I didn't see Fleets yet. I just read about it, and that's
what you mentioned.
Yeah,
like what you mentioned though about how you respect it, but you don't really engage with it. You know, maybe as much as some of these other things. I think that's really the core problem here, right? At the end of the day, you know what? Twitter, as it was never going to be at the scale of something like an Instagram, right?
Right.
In terms of how much of the world would adopt and use it. And I think that's a problem, right? Like they're a company, right? Like any other company. They're also a public company. And I think they just kind of got in a trap where realistically that original product that you mentioned, like Ev Williams and the original founders created, it wasn't like from an enterprise standpoint in terms of building out a venture or company, like was not a great product. It would not appeal to a lot of people, right? And I think that's what they've been struggling with. And so I think, again, this is
and it wouldn't have all those like social dilemma stuff where like it doesn't have the same like addictive nature and pulling you in and like doing all these things to like get your attention.
But they've been trying to do that, right? And I think that's kind of the sad thing here. And it makes sense because they're a company, they need to make money, they need to be able to do things, but I just don't think they're inherently able to do that the same way, you know, Facebook and Instagram does, which I like because I don't think they should be those things, but I think that's ultimately what's happening here, right? It's like they're trying to push more features to like bring in more of that audience, right? Yeah. Because again, it can't just be those, you know, news nerds or Twitter nerds, right? That use Twitter. They have to bring in a bigger audience. So I think that's part of the problem. And again, like I think it's unfortunate there's not more Wikipedias in the world, right? Like I actually can't even think of, other than Wikipedia itself, like I can't think of very many things at that scale that consciously decided, no, we're not going to be a business, right?
Yeah. And that's the sad thing about Twitter, right? It's like you kind of nailed it there. Like this is really a problem with the shareholders putting pressure on the company to grow. Because, I mean, Twitter could be a very successful company and just stay a certain size and not grow to be huge and be very focused on this is what we are, right? It's kind of like, I like when like remember when the light phone came out? Like that very minimalist like phone and all these things are coming out. Like these phones are never going to be as big as an iPhone or whatever, right? But it's like, if you decide as a company, we're going to focus and stay this size because this is who we are, right? Like, it's really it's sad when all these companies just like need to grow to a certain size and then start really abandoning what they are and ultimately make the company worse, right? Like it's just, yeah, or at least worse for, you know, in my viewpoint. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are going to be super happy with Fleets and they're gonna love it. But I mean, it's the same thing I was complaining about last week, right? This okay. We should really just call our podcast like Grumpy Old Men, like the same thing about like on demand versus whatever, right? There's clearly a way bigger market for on demand. Like the majority of the world does not want like to pay a couple $100s a month for channels that you never watch and whatever, right? And so, but for me personally, I'm losing out on that or whatever, right? But the market demand and the way technology is going, like it's just way more, right? But I mean, it's almost like, again, why you see like old like older people, it's like, oh no, vinyl is way better than MP3 and all this stuff like that, right? So,
yeah. I just want the vinyl version of Twitter, basically.
All right, that's Old Man Sit Anchor ranting about Fleets. Very interesting stuff there. So if you guys can't get enough of the ETC podcast while we're away, don't forget we do have 50 some episodes in the backlog that you can have. And Spotify just introduced a new feature where you can download individual episodes to your device. So if if all 52 episodes are just too much Casey Lee and Aaron Sedanker for you to listen to, Spotify, you can now individually select certain episodes to download to your phone. I didn't even know this was a problem. I don't use Spotify as my podcast platform. I think Dave does though, actually.
Like this is a pretty common. Isn't this a pretty common thing in podcast apps. Like,
yeah. So I think the issue is like, so well, that's funny too, because Spotify, you can download individual songs. So it's weird that, I guess you could only follow the entire podcast, and then if you follow the entire podcast, and all the episodes would download or something like that.
Okay.
If I looked into this story a little bit more, I might have had more information.
Dave, write into us and tell us how it works.
Yes, and by the time we get your email, we'll be off the air, but we'll get to it at some point. Couple other small things. I believe is it HBO as well? I think HBO. There is a Fresh Prince reunion happening. So it's not a reboot. It's not like every other show is doing. It's just a reunion. And I don't want to spoil the trailer. You guys should just go watch the trailer. I mean, it's ultimately, again, just a reunion. So it's all the cast gathering together and talking about the stuff. I think we talked about this because I have a feeling I also mentioned how like James Avery is dead. He's passed away now. So he's obviously not there, but they talk about him as well. But there's a kind of little thing at the end that's like, oh shoot, that's crazy that's happening. So yeah, Fresh Prince reunion, I believe on HBO. And more this is all just coincidentally, this is all HBO news. I wasn't watching HBO, whatever. But Wonder Woman 1984 may be transitioning to HBO Max actually, instead of a theatrical release. So
yeah, it's not out yet, right?
No, I haven't seen a lot about that movie. I mean, there was I think one or two trailers that I've seen, but I mean, the first movie was great.
Cool. I mean, is this the second? This is the second one.
Second, yeah, second.
Yeah. The first one was good. So I guess this is continuing in a line of big releases or bigger releases that are basically just launching streaming and I mean, I don't even know. Theaters are open in some places, so they are wherever those are open. I guess they'll release at the same time.
I'm curious. Like Tenet's got to be coming out on video soon, right? Like I think we waited long enough.
Did they not announce? I think they announced like streaming dates or sorry, not streaming dates, but like I guess like purchase, digital purchase. I think that was announced. Cool. I don't know what the date was, but yeah, that unfortunately, can't catch that in IMAX. I don't think, but yeah.
But with spatial audio, hopefully the experience will be comparable. And also, there is no YouTube Rewind this year. So YouTube Rewind, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to.
In fact, my very first YouTube Rewind I ever watched was in your parents' basement. Actually, I think you were the one who found it, and I think it was like Christmas or New Year's.
Yeah.
It was the one. It was the year that Gangnam Style was out.
Right. Yeah. Did they? I mean, is there a reason that there isn't? Like, it seems like that can't be COVID related, can it?
I don't know. Like, I want to say it is COVID related. They had an official tweet about it. Let me read it here. So, again, FDK YouTube Rewind is basically their kind of epic video that they release at the end of the year to celebrate all the YouTube creators and all the stuff that's happened. There has been kind of some big criticisms over the last couple of years. The videos have, like, there was one video with Will Smith that people just absolutely hated. It was the most thumbs down video like ever, I think, of all time or something like that. It was really it was definitely like a lot of backlash. And then so the year after, they kind of copped out and they just did a kind of montage and they didn't get everybody involved or whatever. Yeah. So this year, I don't know if it's just because of so many bad years of press or whatever. Yeah. But this is what they had. So where was it? This is just whatever. I'm not gonna waste airtime on this. Not waste airtime on this. Waste airtime on me searching for the tweet. But there's some tweet that basically said like the 2020 has been a very different year. So we're just not doing YouTube Rewind this year. Okay. So
I feel like you're right though. I feel like the decline there's been a decline of not the content, but maybe just like the nature of it and people caring about it. Because like I think what was really cool about that stuff in the early days, again, I think I could probably also rant about YouTube. That's maybe another episode, but I feel like in the early days it was kind of cool because it was almost like again, there's less content. It was less of a, just this crazy everything on YouTube situation. And so like those rewind videos were kind of cool because it's like, oh yeah, like there's only a handful of these and it's cool. Like it's very creative. It's very like, there's only a handful of like people doing really interesting things. And now there's so much that it's like, maybe there's almost too much to choose from. And then like everyone knows about YouTube. They can't like showcase something that maybe everyone, would be happy with.
Well, and I also think like they kind of like I liked it. Like I love that Gangnam Style one. Like that was like Gangnam Style and Walk Off the Earth and a couple others. But like what I loved about those is those were they were like really great mashups. Like the music was such an awesome mix of all these videos. And as these people showed up, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that person. Oh, I know that person or whatever. Yeah. And then you're also like, wow, it's so great that they got so many of these people together and all this stuff
exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
And that now just kind of like there's some weird like there's sometimes some weird stories involved and all this stuff like that. You know, and they're not as bad as like, I think people are like just outraged by some of these things, which is like crazy, but like there definitely were better in the day. But anyways, here's what they said. They said, since 2010, we've ended the year with Rewind, a look back at the year's most impactful creators, videos, and trends. Whether you love it or only remember 2018, as in the year they really messed up, Rewind was always meant to be a celebration of you. But 2020 has been different, and it doesn't feel right to carry on as if it weren't. So we're taking a break from Rewind this year. We know that so much of the good that did happen in 2020 was created by all of you. You found ways to lift people up, help them cope, and make them laugh. You made Hard Year genuinely better. Thank you for making a difference. So it's interesting. It's just like
I feel there's a missed opportunity there. I feel like they could have really
you're right.
Like because there's probably been so many really cool things that have happened this year. I feel like they could have focused on that and all the ways that people have been kind of dealing and things that the positive that has come out of it, right? The kind of really great stories. So yeah, that's interesting. I feel like they could have done something there. Yeah,
you're totally right. You're right. Like it's just like I mean, there's so much that had to have happened on YouTube this year, right? Like there's just like crazy. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was looking for streaming devices, it was like they were sold out everywhere because everyone was buying these things, right, to do streaming and all that stuff.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. So, you're right. Yeah, definitely missed opportunity. So, YouTube Rewind, none this year. Although other YouTubers have teased that, maybe we should do our own Rewind or whatever. So who knows? Maybe something will come out of it. All right, we're coming to a close on this episode 52 of the ETC podcast, your one-stop pod for entertainment, technology, and cars and all things random. If you want to get in touch with us, be sure to email us at podcast.etc@gmail.com. And you can also follow us on Twitter at the ETC podcast. If you want to go to our official website, you can even leave a voice message there. It's anchor.fm/the-etc-podcast. The ETC podcast is currently hosted on Anchor.fm, but distributed to all your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where you can download an individual episode, Overcast, and more, including Google and Radio something or rather. Just find it. You'll find it. It'll be great. Like I said, this is going to be the third last episode in the season. It has been a really, really awesome season, but we want to take a break. But it will not, I promise you this one, it'll not be another 8 years. Between seasons on this one, but it has been great. The ETC podcast, these conclusions start so strong. They start so strong, and they just crumble into little pieces towards the end. Anyways, that is it for episode 52 of the ETC podcast. This wonderful November 18th, Wednesday, 2020, episode 52, 60 minus 8, 57 minus 5, and 2/4 plus 2. Yes, the square root of 52 squared. My name is Casey Lee, and sitting across the city from me, as always, is
Aaron Zadenka.
That was terrible. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Go check out some fleets.